Previously, on Wars That Broke Tumblr, the year was 2013, the fandoms were shipping, the bloggers were spiraling, and somewhere in the crossfire, a gay angel romance nearly brought an entire website to its knees. Episode 1 chronological the shipping wars, a battleground of OTPs, fanfiction, and emotional war crimes, but what happens when online obsession meets offline rage? Enter 2014, a new force emerges, not from the fandoms themselves, but from the deep, festering underbelly of Tumblr's antagonist class, the trolls. These weren't your average anons, these were self-proclaimed anti-fandom warriors, armed with nothing but blunt takes, rage bait, and a complete disregard for the sacredness of fan tags. The battlefield had shifted. This time, it wasn't ships fighting ships, it was outsiders storming the gates. And what started as petty provocations quickly escalated into full-blown tag raids. This is the story of how Tumblr's most sacred spaces, the fandom tags, were invaded, corrupted, and weaponized, and how in the aftermath of the shipping wars, this space of the internet found new ways to burn. And without further ado, let's get into the wars that broke Tumblr. Episode 2, the tag raids of 2014. It always starts with silence, not peace, just silence, the kind of uneasy stillness that settles after a major catastrophe. By early 2014, the shipping wars had left Tumblr scarred, friendships ended, discourse tags were radioactive, and even the most die-hard fandom bloggers were starting to log off, if only temporarily. But make no mistake, the war wasn't over, it had simply gone cold. The fandoms were still out there, Doctor Who, Supernatural, Sherlock, Attack on Titan, each licking their wounds, side-eyeing one another across the digital no man's land. The Distel truthers had gone quiet, but their memes still circulated. The anti-shippers were regrouping in a shadowy discourse side blogs, and in the background, a new sentiment was beginning to form. Not anger, not grief, resentment, because while fandoms had always fought among themselves, something had changed. The endless drama made Tumblr into a spectacle. Fandom behavior had become meme-worthy, embarrassing, and most dangerously, mockable. As the three big fandoms, you know the ones, tried to rebuild their little empires, a different kind of user was watching. Not a shipper, not a fan, but an observer. Delusioned, detached, and increasingly hostile. They didn't want to win the discourse, they wanted to burn the discourse down. The fandom Cold War wasn't marked by open fighting, it was marked by tension, passive-aggressive posts, shady tags. People weren't dragging each other, they were watching, waiting, lurking, because sooner or later, someone was going to snap. And when they did, all it would take was a single reblog to trigger the next war. No one remembers who fired the first shot. Some say it started with a Supernatural post. Others blame the Homestucks. One theory, it was just a bored 14-year-old trying to be funny, and for a moment, it was. But under the surface of the shitposting and spam, something deeper was brewing, an ideological split that wasn't just about ships or tags anymore. It was about how people believed Tumblr should function. On one side, the fandom purists, people who saw Tumblr as a sacred space, an escape from the real world where tags were for fan art, fic recs, and emotionally devastating meta. To them, the raids weren't funny, they were violations. And on the other side, the chaos agents, users who believed the fandom culture had gone too far, that it had become toxic, self-absorbed, performative. They saw the raids not as trolling, but as correction, a moral reckoning, a reality check for people who took their fictional obsessions way too seriously. This was the moral divide. The fandom side claimed that their spaces were being harassed, their joy trampled on. The raiders claimed that they were pushing back against entitlement and cringe culture. Both sides believed that they were in the right. Both believed that they were defending Tumblr's soul. And just like that, the raids became politicized. Suddenly, reblogging a cursed meme into the Sherlock tag wasn't just annoying, it was resistance. Flooding the anime tag with stock photos of spaghetti, a statement. And for the fandoms, pushing back wasn't just self-defense, it was preserving community. The battle lines were no longer drawn around fandoms or ships, they were drawn around ideology. And the thing about moral crusades on Tumblr, they never end well. The dam finally broke. Somewhere in the early months of 2014, what started as scattered trolling became something else entirely, coordinated, relentless, and completely unhinged. The tag raids had officially begun. Fandom tags that once held curated fanworks and emotional essays were suddenly flooded with cursed images, memes, and bizarre anti-fandom manifestos. The Supernatural tag was hit first, then Doctor Who, then it spread like a virus. The methods were simple. 1. Find a popular fandom tag. 2. Post the most chaotic, off-topic content you can find. 3. Watch the meltdown. Gore posts, shock images, screen caps from the B-movie, dozens of JPEGs of Sonic the Hedgehog with no context. Nothing was off limits. Some raiders even used bots to mass port irrelevant content, spamming tags with such frequency that normal content was drowned out in seconds. And it wasn't just visual spam. Some users weaponized discourse itself, posting inflammatory takes with the sole purpose of enraging as many people as possible. Your fave is problematic. Shipping is abuse. Anime fans touch grass challenge. Boom. Dozens of reblogs. Instant chaos. The fandom response was all over the place. Some bloggers tried to fight back, reporting users and mass blocking. Others fled, creating new clean tags in hopes of escaping the mess, adding things like #supernaturalsafe or #attack on Titan are only to their posts. A few brave souls tried reasoning with the raiders. That did not go well, and some fandoms retaliated with their own raids, fanon versus anti-fanon. Some wars reignited, even fandoms that weren't being targeted started picking fights just to stay relevant. It was digital bedlam, and at the center of it all was one undeniable truth. Tumblr was no longer just a platform, it was a battlefield. By mid-2014, the raids were no longer just a nuisance, they were a fact of life. Every fandom on Tumblr knew the routine. Open your tag, brace for impact. Scroll past the gore, scroll past the memes, try to find your fan art in the wreckage. But fandoms didn't just sit there and take it, they adapted. Welcome to the fandom front lines, the first line of defense, tag migration. If the main tag was compromised, users would just create new ones. #supernaturalsafe, #SNK, fanart only, #Sherlockians unite. These tags were quieter, harder to find, and most importantly, not yet rated. Of course, once word got out, the raiders would follow. It was a digital arms race. Fandoms also began posting elaborate disclaimers and tag warnings. Do not raid this post. Fandom positivity only. Some even created tagging codes only insiders would recognize, turning ordinary tags into hidden pathways for true fans to navigate through the noise. Then came the counterattacks. Certain fandoms, especially the larger and more organized ones, decided enough was enough. If the trolls wanted war, they'd get one. Entire threads were dedicated to identifying known raiders. Call-out posts flew like missiles. Block lists circulated with military precision. Some fandoms even created group chats in Discord servers specifically to coordinate defense. And let's not forget the passive aggressives, the ones who reblogged troll content ironically, flooded their dashboards with sarcasm, and replied to every raid with a condescending, "Okay lame-o." But here's the thing, every time fandoms tried to defend themselves, it gave the raiders exactly what they wanted, a reaction. The more organized the resistance became, the more trolls escalated. It wasn't just about disrupting content anymore, it was about proving a point. To the raiders, fandoms were fragile, overinvested, and easy to provoke. To the fandoms, the raiders were harassers, bullies, and everything wrong with Tumblr. Both sides thought they were winning, neither side realized just how much damage had already been done. By the end of 2014, the raids had left Tumblr in shambles, fandoms were fragmented, tag spaces were unreliable at best, hostile at worst, entire blogs went dark, others rebranded entirely, ditching old usernames, switching fandoms, or just disappearing without a word. And what remained? Filter culture. If you couldn't stop the chaos, you could mute it. Users began creating personalized defense systems, browser extensions, Tumblr savior blacklists, XKit tag filters. Some dashboards looked more like military-grade radar screens than social platforms. You'd see a beautiful fan art post with 10 tags underneath, 7 of which were just disclaimers and warnings. #no discourse, #not ship hate, #please don't raid, #fandom safe zone, as if hashtags could stop a digital bombardment from happening. There were whispers that Tumblr staff might do something. They didn't. The platform remained a lawless wasteland maintained by vibes, plugins, and collective burnout. The only real policy was don't feed the trolls, but by this point, the trolls didn't need feeding. They had already eaten, and they were full. Meanwhile, a new type of Tumblr user emerged, the cynic, someone who had seen too much, reblogged too many discourse posts, witnessed too many mutuals fall in the great tag collapse. They didn't care anymore. They posted memes. They posted shit posts. They refused to tag anything. They were done pretending this site had rules, and in a way, that was its own kind of peace. Because while some fandoms rebuilt, others scattered, some never recovered, and for the rest, they just kept scrolling. So, what did we learn? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. the tag raids didn't end with a bang. There was no peace treaty, no final boss fight, no meaningful resolution. Like most things on Tumblr, it just faded. People got tired, the chaos lost its novelty, the rest of us developed emotional calluses. But what makes the tag raid so fascinating, at least to me, is how sincere it all was. Tumblr is often dismissed as a mess of fandoms, memes, and weird discourse spirals. And it is, but it's also a place where people cared a lot, sometimes way too much. Fandom wasn't just entertainment, it was identity. And when you poke at that, even with a joke or a meme, people react like you set their house on fire. The tag raids weren't just trolling, they were a culture clash between fans and anti-fans, between sincerity and irony, and people who took the internet personally, and people who weaponized that exact instant for sports. And somewhere in the middle of that mess was a platform that enabled all of it, quietly, passively, with no real guardrails, just vibes. And maybe that was what made Tumblr feel so wild, so unhinged, and so real. It was the last big internet space where the lines between sincere and satirical completely dissolved, where people could wage tag wars over fictional gay angels one day and then reblog cursed memes with no context the next. So yeah, the tag raids were retarded. They were also kind of a beautiful dumpster fire. They changed how fandom operated online, probably forever. And thus concludes another deeply unnecessary but historically vital episode of Wars That Broke Tumblr. What did we accomplish? Nothing. Who won? Nobody. But did we learn? Emotionally? Yes. Academically? No. Spiritually? Maybe. The tag system never recovered. Fandoms learned to cope through memes, mutual block lists, and pretending like nothing ever happened. And Tumblr did what it always does, shrugged, reblogged something cursed, and kept moving. But don't get too comfy, because while Tumblr was tearing itself apart from the inside, a much dumber disaster was unfolding outside the digital realm that involved corporate mishandling, social media hellscapes, and a children's inflatable toy that would go down in internet history. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, the ball pit campaign, or how not to host a convention. Seriously, it's worse than you think.